Good evening, everyone. I see it is now 6 o'clock, so I will call the May 25th meeting of the Administration and Finance Committee to order. Ms. Mathis, if you would call the roll, please.
Certainly. Malinowski,
Here.
McBride,
Here.
Joe Walker. Joe Walker. Overture Walker. Overture Walker. Mackey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next order of business would be the approval of the minutes, pages 7 to 15 of our agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair. Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Mathis, please take the vote.
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker. Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next will be the approval of the agenda. Administrator Brown, is there anything that we need to know about in the way of additions or deletions?
No, sir, Mr. Chair. There are no additions or deletions requested from staff.
Thank you, Administrator. Anyone else? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Mathis?
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker. Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is item 4 under items for action. A, request from Chief Magistrate regarding bond court consolidation. That is found on pages 16 to 57 of our agenda. Would entertain a motion unless someone wants to just merely discuss it first. That is fine also. With the committee's permission, I would be glad to provide my thoughts on this since this goes back prior to some of our council members that are here on the committee.
Okay.
Okay. What I would like to start the background so that everyone's familiar with this in the event they did not have the opportunity to read all the details. This item started in this committee back on February 25th of 2020. It was subsequently deferred 3 times. It went till April of 20, and then it went till May of 20, and in May of 20, it was deferred a 3rd time. Each time it was deferred unanimously, and the reason for the deferral was to answer questions that were presented by members of the committee. The questions had to deal with more specificity on the actual finances and the dollar amounts that we were being presented. There had been inconsistencies in different areas on the dollar amounts presented. There were concerns about the legality of the Supreme Court ruling and the city of Columbia not being in compliance. And that went back to 2007. And our legal department at that time, Attorney Smith, made the comment that his concern was if we consolidate the bond court without that issue being resolved, that the county would assume that issue. And not having all the details, he stated that we did not get any clarity from the city about what it was that the Supreme Court was requiring them to do as it related to their bonds. I believe there was also a question from Mr. Hayes in finance about some of the finances. So the deferrals, the last deferral was May of 2020. And we've not heard a thing until a year later now in May of 2021. And with this being placed back on the agenda in May of 2021, we still have not been given the answers that were asked by council members back then. So I would make a motion that we defer this matter. I'd be glad to speak with Chief Magistrate Edmonds, or I see we have Magistrate Coble was here with us. I saw him on the line. I'd be glad to point out if they're uncertain what these questions were so that we get the answers until we actually take this up. So I would make a motion to defer it so we get all the questions answered until such a time as the answers come forward, and then we'll place it back.
Mr.
on.
Malinowski, I had my hand up before you asked for the motion for deferral.
Oh, yeah. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Livingston.
So this won't keep, bouncing back and so forth. I think it's important for us to be very specific about what those questions you're talking about. We need to come up with a list of questions to get the answers to if there are questions, because we'll be back here the next time talking about questions. So I don't know what all those questions are we need answers to, but we need to be very specific.
All right, well, we need to have our legal department notified as to what the state Supreme Court asked the city to do to come in compliance with as it related to their bonds in their bond court. There were also questions as to the finances. Are the employees that are now in the city going to be, I guess, transitioned over to the county and they become county employees at that point in time? The dollar amounts, I could have to go back here, but I have it all written down of all the discrepancies that there were regarding the staff salaries, the judge salaries. Another question was that it stated that bond court staff who work solely at the bond court would receive an additional $4,000 stipend on top of their salary. I'd like to know why they get a $4,000 stipend above and beyond what other employees are getting just because they work at the bond court. There was a question as to the average salary of the staff. It had $39,000 on page 30 of our current agenda, but on page 17 of our current agenda, it shows staff salaries. And if you average it out, it comes to an excess of $44,000. So there's a $5,000 discrepancy. Operating costs. It has travel. What travel expense is there? Who is incurring that relating to a bond court when this work is being done locally? There's no line item breakdown for the operating costs on page 17. Actually, if you look at the line item cost for each of the operational costs mentioned here and go to page 47, it totals up to only $6,000, yet we've got $20,000 here. Will Richland County need more staff if these bond courts are consolidated? If yes, then that's going to increase the average cost that we're being shown on page 19. Also, we're being told that it will cost the county, it had a dollar figure in here. It said that the approximate cost came to $523,000 annually in running the bond court, and that the city would be paying more. It said that the new cost to the county bond court estimate is approximately $410,000, and the city would pay $523,000. But that $523,000, the difference is what was done and what was provided to us was they took the number of detainees in the county, it came up with an average cost per detainee. They took the number of detainees from the city, came up with an average cost, and that's when they put forward what the new cost would be. But when you divide it out, the total 1.4 million cost by the total number of detainees, that means that the cost to Richland County is 485,600, not 410,000. So there are some big differences in numbers. It talks about increased liability risks. I don't know why we in Richland County would want to take on increased liability risks if we have our own with our own bond court judges. Throughout here, all it mentions is that this will help the city save money. It will help the city get out of the situation they're in with the Supreme Court. And I don't see any benefits being given on what it does for Richland County. So I would just end there, and without going into all the specific details about the number discrepancies, I would be glad to get with anybody from the magistrate's office and point out where those discrepancies exist and see if we can get some definite hard numbers. One other item that was placed in our agenda this time, there is a letter on page 27 dated April 22nd from City Manager Teresa Wilson with an opening line that is my understanding Richland County Council has indicated an interest in consolidating the county and city bond courts. This item didn't get on this agenda until April 27th, 5 days after this letter was written, and a year after the initial item was in front of this committee. So I'm not so sure why this letter is here and who's telling people tales about an interest on behalf of the county when we've not even acted on it in over a year. So those are my comments on it, Chairman Livingston.
I would suggest that, and I have a couple of questions too, but I would suggest that we give those questions to somebody so the next time we'll have answers and won't be spinning wheels, is my concern.
And I will be glad to write them down and send them to the administrator.
I
So
think that's a great idea for any council member. I think it'd be a good idea to just for all of us to send any questions we have, so that way we'll have answers when we'll meet again.
And I like that idea. And so I would make a motion now. I don't see it. Oh, wait a minute. I see Miss McBride has her hand up.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, thank you for your explanation and providing us with those questions. And I was here last year, a year before last. It seems like a long time ago when this came up. But there is not a full understanding, in my opinion, of what exactly needs to be done. And I don't think it's fair to the new members on the committee. I think that given some of the questions that you have already provided us with, that there needs to be a really good explanation of the purpose of this, and also the request coming in with full details as well as financial information. I just don't think that the committee members know enough about the issue to address it at this time, and that we need more details for our committee members. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. I agree with you. Any other discussion?
Councilman, Chairman
Walker.
Malinowski, if I
Yes,
may
sir.
be recognized, let me just say this. I agree with the concept of consolidating, county and city bond court. I guess my perspective on this is somewhat unique in that not only am I a practicing attorney who has practiced in county magistrates court and city bond court, but have also had the privilege of serving as a city judge. And so just from a logistical standpoint and from a standpoint of streamlining our court system here in Richland County, this is a good idea. It's a great concept. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard of someone who gets arrested, on a charge in the county and they get a bond within a couple hours versus someone who may get arrested in the city and they're having to sit until the very next morning because the county has a 24-hour bond court, whereas the city of Columbia, they're holding bond court once a day. Now, I'm not going to lecture anybody about the Supreme Court order, but state law requires, and in fact, when the Supreme Court issued its order, it just wasn't with the city of Columbia in mind, but reminding a number of summary courts around the state that you are to hold bond court twice a day, not once a day. And so I think the aim behind this was so that as opposed to the city holding bond court twice a day, they were thinking about just turning their bond court over completely to the county. Now, I know that conversation about consolidating bond court, that's been sort of bandied about well before I even came to this council. That's probably been a conversation going on now for over a decade. But in any event, I certainly, if there are questions that this committee still has that need to be answered, then perhaps deferral is the best thing at this point. But if I could just sort of echo Councilman Livingston's sentiments, is make sure that the questions that we need answers to, we get those questions to the appropriate persons. Let's get those answers so that way we can make an informed decision going forward. But certainly I support the concept. And I don't want those who have been working hard to present this for the committee to think that this committee is shooting it down. But if anyone knows anything about Councilman Malinowski, is you're big on the details. And I always tell people, get Chairman Malinowski.
You have cut out, Mr. Walker. When you come back, we'll let you finish. In the meantime, I see Ms. Horatio has her hand up. Ms. Horatio.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. When you we're talking about possible deferral, and I'm happy to listen more to Councilman Walker and his perspective on this. I would be curious to know from the magistrates, given the very clear list of information that we would need, when they thought they could maybe get this information back to us and try to keep the ball moving on it.
Judge Edmonds, did you want to answer that? Or, I mean, that may be something you can't answer, and it's just when you get it back to us and ready, we can move forward then.
And I can, this is Judge Coble.
Yeah.
I can have that information ready for you by tomorrow afternoon. We got particularly the legal requirements we met with legal last year to discuss it. As the finance, we can go over some of those numbers to get those straightened out to make sure they're most accurate, up to date. Everything else we can get to you as soon as possible within 24 hours.
Okay, it wouldn't need to be that quick because the committee won't meet again till the end of the next month. So you've got some time, but we could have it by then. Thank you. Mr. Horatio, that answers your question, all right?
It sure does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, well, I will send my comments to the administrator and a copy to Judge Edmonds, Chief Magistrate Edmonds, and anyone else that has questions or comments. Also, I encourage you to get them to them so that we can hopefully get this item resolved at the next committee meeting to forward to council. Ms. McBride, your hand.
Yeah. Again, Mr. Chair, I would just like for someone, I don't know who, you did a good job in the beginning to give an overview at the next council meeting.
Okay.
Maybe Mr. Walker. You did a great job.
Chief Magistrate Edmonds or Judge Coble, maybe one of y'all could get that ready for the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We'll get that out too.
All right, that would be good. Okay, any other discussion? If not, then I'll make the motion to defer to the next committee meeting.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Deferral is non-debatable. Debatable. Ms. Mathis, if you'll call the roll, please.
Certainly. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. The next item, 4B, Operational Services Award of Township Auditorium Boiler Project. Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, in your packet on page 58, what you have is information concerning the township boiler request staff. Staff is requesting that council and through this committee approve this to go forward. What you have is a very old boiler at the township, noted in the document, roughly 45 years old. You have also a older facility. The boiler is past its life expectancy. The items that we're requesting are a part of the capital improvement program that was approved by council. Bids have gone out, and at this point, it is simply up to the committee whether or not they would approve staff's request to get this item replaced at the township. It is a much needed item. It is considered a high priority, again, past life expectancy for this boiler. And so hopefully the committee will take staff's recommendation and move this project forward to council.
Move for approval.
Second.
Here we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? I only have a couple of quick questions, Administrator Brown. The contingency, I realize, is quite high, and you're indicating that due to the age of the building and the boiler. But did the bidder that bid this request this type of contingency?
No, sir. Generally, the contingencies is something that staff puts in. It would not be a request of the bidder. But certainly to clarify and make sure I do not misspeak, I have Randy Pruitt, and I believe also have Jennifer Lajiskin, the procurement manager, who could speak to that with specificity, Mr. Chair.
Well, what I would like to say is, and I mentioned this before, we've got somebody that put in a bid of $150,000. And it's normally expected, it's, I believe, a 15% contingency is put in there. But when we turn around and say we're going to give 1/3 of the bid as a contingency, and we also let the person know that $200,000 was budgeted, that's kind of like showing your cards before the bets are made. And I've complained about this before. I don't think, I mean, we go into executive session for other contractual matters during regular council meetings, but we don't need to go into executive session if we keep putting all our cards on the table prior to the bets being made. So I would in the future like to see what I consider to be contractual information and dollar figures held in abeyance of just throwing them out there arbitrarily for everyone to see. I mean, certainly if I were this bidder, I'd turn around and say, well, guess what? It's going to cost you $30,000 more because we found this problem. We've already told them we expect that you may do it. So I'd like to see the way we do business changed. There's no other discussion. I'll ask Ms. Mathis to call for the vote, please.
Certainly. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is 4C, Operational Services, Township Auditorium Lighting Upfit, Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a township auditorium item. This also falls within the capital improvement program that was presented to council. And this project is just moving forward at this time. What you have is a retrofit of older lights to LED quality lights for the auditorium. There is some cost efficiencies with this new process. I'm going to ask Mr. Chair if you would recognize Randy Pruitt to talk about the current status of the lighting that's there and why the movement to the LED quality lights were recommended.
Sure, Director Pruitt.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The current lighting that we have in the township auditorium's life expectancy when you turn it on is approximately 100 hours. It also generates a tremendous amount of heat, which in turn has our AC systems overworking. When we convert to the LEDs, the heat goes away. There's also the power consumption that these existing bulbs take is tremendous. These are lights that actually, if you look into the ordinance, were outlawed, I believe, in 2008 by the Richland County Council. So what we're trying to do is also in the ordinance, the council said we want to go green. We want to try to get a green initiative to try to transfer everything in the county to facilities to be more energy efficient. So this is a part of that program, trying to get this to move forward.
Director Pruitt, could you also speak to where we have to get replacement bulbs now if lights go out in the current lighting that is at the auditorium, please?
Yes, sir. The current bulbs are only manufactured in China, and especially during the tariffs, and the COVID, it's very difficult to obtain these items anymore. And it used to take a couple of 2 or 3 months. Now it's taken 6 to 7 months. So, and they're very, very expensive. Their price has tripled. So it's not cost effective to put this project off anymore.
Okay, and the new bulbs aren't coming from China?
No, sir. These are US made LED, low energy consumption bulbs.
Okay, Mr. Ratio, followed by Ms. McBride.
Thank you. As someone who kind of came up in a theater, my question is, are these the theater lightings, like the Fresnels and those kinds of lights? And if so, those are practically like antiques now. And is there a secondary market? Is it, or do we have a plan about what to do with them? And does my question make sense?
Goes to me.
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Director Pruitt.
I don't know that I quite understood your question, ma'am. If you could try to rephrase it a little bit for me.
Sure. Would these be like the light? So when you're talking about the lights that are putting off so much heat, are you talking about the lights, especially the ones that would be on stage? So like the theater type lights?
Yes, ma'am. These are in the auditorium and on the stage. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes. And so those are, I've hung many of those lights and put gels in many of those lights. They are, at this point, we'll call them vintage. And so my question is, are they, I could imagine that there may be a specialty or secondary market for people who might want to continue to have such a type of light as that for, a specific purpose or a specific kind of show or something. Do we have a plan about what we're going to do with the old ones?
The only plan that we had in place, ma'am, was to properly dispose of them. They are outlawed by the Richland County Council, so we weren't looking to try to repurpose or resell.
Thank you. Is it, I'm not a member of this committee, but I would like to advocate for maybe perhaps seeing if there was somebody who would want those items.
We can definitely make that reach out. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ratio. Ms. McBride?
My question is just the opposite of Ms. Terratio. Have we been in communications with Mr. Holloman regarding the lights that we're going to use, that we're planning to use? Because I know that it's very important, the lighting in entertainment. So I was wondering, are we using the most modern or the best lights available for entertainment? And was Mr. Holloman a part of this decision?
Mr.
Be recognized.
I have Director Pruitt follow up, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Director.
Holloman, excuse me, Mr. Malinowski. I think Mr. Holloman is on.
I saw him earlier, but I don't see him now. Oh, yeah, there he is. Why don't we have Mr. Holloman? Could you respond to that, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me at the moment?
Yes.
Good. Thanks for being here. Yes, to answer Mr. Ratio's question, a lot of the lightings that we have also that are primarily inside the auditorium, those most likely cannot be reused. Those are the 500-watt bulbs that are located inside the ceiling that are totally like outlaw. A lot of our lighting, we may have some that are above the stage in the part that you mentioned that may or may not can be resold, but we know the ones that are inside the auditorium in the ceiling, those are totally outlawed. Those are one thing you can do with this, dispose of them. And to answer your question, Councilman McBride, yes, these are lighting that we're getting now, certainly going to be more energy efficient, more cost effective for, and it's certainly going to help us in the theater when we're doing events.
Thank you.
You through, Ms. McBride?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Livingston, I saw your hand.
My question been answered. I was going to state a little bit of what Mr. Holloman stated. So I'm good.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to go back to comment on Mr. Ratio's comment about repurposing and Mr. Holloman saying they're outlawed everywhere. That may be the case. It's against the law to ride in vehicles without seat belts, but if you've got a Model T that you've redone, you're allowed to have that. And not to say they would be used, but there are collectors out there that maybe they're into all kinds of theater collectibles, and they may like to have just one of these in their collection. It would not be repurposed or reused, but there could be an antiquity value to it. And I think we need to look at that rather than just dispose of them. I don't, unless you tell me it's against the law to sell it for a collectible type piece, I think there could be some purpose there. Did anyone comment on that? Ms. McBride?
I don't know, but it could be that they're dangerous to your health. So I wouldn't want Richland County giving away lights that could be dangerous with ultraviolet lights or whatever it is. I don't know. So that's another thing to think about in terms of health issues.
I understand what you're saying, but I also understand there's World War II ammunition out there that because of the age of it, people collect it. They don't pick it up to use. They just collect it to have in their collection to make their ammunition complete.
I understand that point, Mr. Malinowski, but some people might use it too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, we're not replacing the fixtures. We're just replacing the bulbs. So the fixtures are going to be retrofitted for the LEDs.
Oh,
So
okay.
your antique value would be with the fixture and the bulb, I would think.
And that, yeah, that's what I was thinking you were doing. Okay. All right, Mr. Ratio.
Thank you. Yes, that's a great clarification. I didn't realize that the fixtures were staying in place and being retrofitted. So I'm sorry, I missed that piece.
I didn't know that either. So, okay. There's no further discussion. We have a motion and a second on this, don't we, Ms. Mathis?
No, I don't believe we have yet. No.
We didn't get that?
Motion to
Right.
approve.
Okay, got a motion? Do we hear a second?
Second.
I say I'll second. Okay, Ms. McBride, is your hand up again for discussion?
Actually, I was seconding.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. If there is no further discussion, Ms. Mathis, if you'll call for the vote, please.
Certainly. Malinowski,
Yes?
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Overture Walker, Overture Walker, Mackey,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Next item is 4D, Financial Audit Services, pages 64 and 65 of our agenda. Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This item is associated with the annual requirement that we have our financials audited. What you have here is a bid that was submitted and responded to. And we have before you a staff's recommendation to award the contract to perform those financial audit services to Malden and Jenkins, who was the only responsive bidder received for this particular item.
Thank you. Any discussion on this matter?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve? Here a second? I'll second it. If there's no additional discussion, Ms. Mathis, if you will call the vote, please.
Certainly. Malinowski,
Yes?
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Overture Walker, Mackey,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Next item is 4E, Department of Public Works award of an 80,000-pound excavator. Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. We have members of the Solid Waste Recycle Center online related to the landfill. This item is specific to that work. So if the chair would recognize the members who are on the line from the landfill to recognize them to speak to this item, I would appreciate it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead. They are recognized.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. It's John Ansel, Solid Waste and Recycling. Yes, sir. We are requesting the purchase of an 80,000-pound excavator. to replace an aging 80,000 pound excavator that we have on the property now. The age, the hours, and the condition of the machine that we currently have are making it cost prohibitive to own. As these machines get older, the parts get harder and harder to find. When the parts are hard to find, it takes longer to get them, and that provides us with lengthy delays in when we can receive those parts and get the machine back up and running. And it is a machine that we rely on almost daily here at the landfill.
Thank you, Mr. Ansel. I would entertain a motion
Move for
on this.
approval.
Okay, we got a motion
Second.
and a second. Is there any discussion? I do see that you did put it out for bid. You had 6 submissions, and you've also got a way of getting rid of the old one to recoup some finances there. So there's no additional discussion. Ms. Mathis, call the vote, please.
Certainly. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Overture Walker, Mackey,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is 4F. Department of Public Works County Line Trail, Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir. This item is, as you can see in your packet on page 69, deals with a FEMA disaster relief grant. But we have Department of Public Works engineering on the line. And again, Mr. Chair, if you would recognize them to speak to this item, I think it would be helpful to hear from them.
Yes, sir. Public Works.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. This is Stephen Staley. This project goes way back to the 2015 flood. It's a long road. It's a cut through road, and it's been closed since 2015. It's taken a while for us to work with FEMA and get satisfied with what the grant funding amount is. And so we finally got that all approved, and now we've got a contractor on board and ready to move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Staley. I would entertain a
Move for
motion.
approval.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Mathis, if you'll call the vote, please.
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Overture Walker, Mackey,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Next item is 4G, Department of Public Works, Danbury Drainage Improvements, Administrator Brown.
Yes, sir. I'm going to ask you to recognize Public Works again, but as you can see in your packet on page 78, this item is funded by a Community Development Block Grant, disaster recovery dollars, and is specific to improvements in drainage. And with that being said, Mr. Malinowski, I'll just ask you to recognize Public Works staff, sir.
Okay, Public Works, go right ahead.
Yes, this project here is a HUD grant that's going to help alleviate some flooding in a neighborhood here in town off of North Main Street. It's the Danbury Community Neighborhood, and we're just ready to get this one started. The folks in the neighborhood are really excited about it and ready to get rid of some of this flooding that they've been dealing with.
Okay, I would entertain a
Mr.
motion.
Chair.
on this one. Yes,
Um,
Mr. McBride.
I move for approval. Happily, I move for approval.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Chair.
Ms. McBride first and then Ms. Mackey.
Okay, I would just like to say that we've been working on this project for 4 years, and the neighbors, the constituents have waited patiently. And we are so happy to see that we're going forward. So I'm just ecstatic over the possibility that we're going to get this done. So thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like I better vote yes on this one.
That's right.
Okay, Ms. Mackey.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that I am pleased to see that the bidder on this contract had a 13.9% minority and disadvantaged business participation on the project. And I think that is a tremendous effort for our community.
Very good. You're right. It is.
Something new too.
Okay, any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Mathis, please call the vote.
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 4G. I'm sorry, 4H. We just did G. 4H, Conservation Commission Award of Bridge and Dirt Road Improvement Project. Is there a motion with this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Malinowski. This is the administrator, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Brown. I did not recognize you. Go ahead. I'm
No
sorry.
problem. You were trying to get through the agenda. I appreciate it. So this item on pages 82, beginning of your packet, you see that this is a request from the Conservation Commission specific to a damaged bridge that they're looking to have replaced. And we have on the line staff from Richland County who works with Conservation Commission who can address this matter if the chair pleases.
Okay, the staff from Conservation Commission, you're recognized.
Yes, this is Quentin Epps, and this bridge was damaged in early February 2020 by flooding. And we originally wanted to replace this bridge and provide some enhancements for the entrance road that goes to the bridge. However, after consultation with the consultant and the selected vendor, we decided to remove the road enhancements and go just strictly with the design for the bridge replacement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Epps. I've got a couple questions on this one. And if there was flooding in February of 2020, I guess that's some flood that didn't come in with the big floods where we got FEMA monies to handle damaged things. Has any request been made somewhere of FEMA or some other agency to try and get funding to repair this damage due to a natural disaster?
No, I don't think that a natural disaster was authorized by the state for this particular flood. And so no requests were made from FEMA or others.
So did the flood actually cause this, or are we just saying due to heavy rain and some flooding in the area that we want to replace it?
There was a flood surge on the property that lifted the bridge up and damaged it because, frankly, probably old wear and tear had caused the bridge to release, but the flood got logs behind it and lifted the bridge up and pushed it off of its beams. And so it was caused by flooding, but it wasn't a flood like the October flood. It was a very localized flood.
Okay, and this is a county road, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My question would be, why isn't this being handled by Public Works since it's a Richland County road? Since when does the Conservation Committee get into bidding out for road and bridge repairs?
The property and the bridge is owned by or managed by the Conservation Commission. We did consult with the Penny Program staff and some with Public Works staff on this in order to get their opinions. But since we manage the property, we put the bid out.
Well, Richland County manages 2020 Hampton Street as well. They own that building. We don't go and repair the roads in front of it. It's not our responsibility. And so I'm asking, whose responsibility is it? Maybe Administrator Brown can answer this, to actually repair roads and bridges in Richland County.
Yes, sir. I think in a certain respect, to your point, there will be a division of Public Works that does that. In this particular instance, and I think to Mr. Epps' point, we're talking about properties that are managed by the Conservation Commission, and based on the various practices, I guess over time, this is one of those things, Mr. Malinowski, that has come before you as just would be the normal practice as what has been happening. So I think to answer your question, short, Public Works would be doing roads within Richland County under their purview. And then in this particular instance, I think what you're seeing is a need to provide some clarity as Conservation Commissioners asking to fix damaged property that they manage through the funding that they're provided through the meal that they receive. So the funding and the property and their management of it, they believe is all associated in one fell swoop, and that this is really a I hate to say this, but kind of a ministerial approval to allow them to use the meal that they've been awarded by the county to do the work that they believe that they are commissioned to do also.
I can see them using the mill, but it seems to me that the people responsible should do it, and then they could be billed for the work and they still can pay for the work. I would think that once we start crossing duties here of who's responsible for what, we open a Pandora's box of who knows who's going to say what's next because of responsibility reasons. We've been given separately, not in the agenda, an attachment, which is a schedule of fees, and not to mention any of that there, any of the figures, but who created that schedule of fees, as well as the backside, which had bridge and dirt improvement.
Mr. Malinowski, this is Jennifer Ladishkin. May I be recognized?
Sure, Ms. Ladishkin.
The schedule of fees is what was provided by the consultant, and that is after negotiations for the change in the scope that Mr. Epps mentioned earlier, removing the dirt road portion and only doing the bridge.
Okay, now I noticed, Ms. Wadishkin, I believe you can answer this. It says on page 83 of our agenda, the very last paragraph, that there were 6 respondents to the request for qualifications, and that the highest ranked offerer was this particular company, Carolina Transportation Engineers. But because it was a request for qualification, my recollection is that no prices are ever determined during that. Is that still correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So even though the second ranked offer could be $50,000 less, we'd never know, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no more questions. Ms. McBride.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, you addressed some of the concerns that I had too regarding, are we looking at policy or practice? And that we need to at least start defining these terms so that there won't be confusion. Because when I read it, I said the same thing. I thought that the county was responsible for the roads. So I would like for us to look into the policies and practices issues. Thank you.
Did you want to make a substitute motion on this then, Ms. McBride?
Well, I don't want to, I guess they've already taken it through the process and now Mr. Malinowski, and I don't want to hold it up, but I do think that's something that we should look at in the future, unless we are breaking policy.
I would say then if we make a motion for approval, that along with that motion, we direct the administrator to determine the policy and make sure we're not in violation of it by making this approval. Would that cover it?
I think that would at least.
Then that would be my motion.
And I'll second it.
All right, thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, Administrator Brown, you've got what the committee's asking for.
Yes, sir, to determine whether or not by approving this item to move forward, if there's a break in policy as to who should be providing the services that are being contracted here and who should be fixing the actual roadway in question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss, there's no other discussion. I don't see any hands up. Ms. Mathis, please call the vote.
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey. Mackey,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 5. Items.
Yes.
Yeah, she got you, Miss Mackey. Thank you. Item 5, items pending analysis, no action required. Move that Richland County direct the administrator and his staff to conduct an equity and inclusive assessment of Richland County administrative policies and services. If you would, Mr. Administrator Brown, could you give us an update on this, please?
Yes, sir. And I can give you 2 items that the staff is currently undertaking. Mr. Mayor, after this item, you will see in some shape, form, or remain in front of this committee until we complete several steps associated with this motion. But currently what we have is we are working with the City of Columbia to see whether or not we can join in their bid that they already had out with, I believe it's Keen, which is the consultant that they were using to do their diversity and equity study. We have been in contact with them to see if we could either join in with them or we could use that provider for our own purposes. So that is something that we are in active conversations with and have exchanges with the city. Additionally, we have also met with the Richland County Library, who had communicated in a meeting that they could support Ms. McBride's motion that they heard her talking about and give us information that they had put in place. So we had initial meetings with them. They provided us some general information for us to use and potentially use a template for. So those things are ongoing as we speak. And those are the 2 active steps that have been taken. One, trying to see if we can join with the city to use their consultant or piggyback off of their consultant and their work for Richland County's purposes. And 2, working with the Richland County Public Library, who has communicated that they have implemented some diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and trainings that they are sharing with Richland County to see how we can modify or utilize those to look into those areas that have been identified throughout the motions presented by Ms. McBride. So that is the current update I have, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Administrator Brown. Ms. McBride.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting the administrator give us the update on it. I actually wrote a letter last 2 nights ago, and I didn't send it, so I'm glad I didn't send it out there in the comments. But I would like to echo the importance of moving on with this. And also, Mr. Chair, you and I have some of the same concerns regarding our procurement process. And that was one of the main issues within this study that I wanted to be looked at, and that there would be an external contractor, because this is something that we cannot do internally. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. McBride. Hearing no additional information, see no other hands, hearing no additional discussion. The last item on the agenda, number 6, to adjourn.
So move.
For adjournment.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Whichever way they went, it was Overture Walker and Ms. McBride. So they both spoke up together. Ms. Mathis, if you'll call the vote, please.
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Overture Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for helping us get through this and cover all the items on time. Appreciate it. See you in